Hi, and welcome back to Gavin's Sonex B. Well, I was going to take a couple of weeks off, as I said in my last video, and have a break from aircraft construction, but I got bored within a couple of days and I'm back at it again. So what am I doing? Well, I'm looking at the cockpit, and the first thing to do on the cockpit is to build up the sides of the cockpit fuselage. So I've started on the right hand side, and there are four sheets associated with building up a side. Three of them are building little sub-assemblies and checking that you've got all the bits, and one of them is actually the assembly. So I'm talking F15, 14, 13 and 12. So 15, 14 and 13 are building little sub-assemblies and checking all the bits, and 12 is actually putting them together. And then obviously you've got to do the same for the left hand side as well. I've resisted the temptation to build the sub-assemblies for the left, because I always get confused when they show the picture of the right hand assembly and then say the opposite for the left. I prefer to build the right hand bits that I can see the drawing for, and then see them in context, and when it's reflected onto the left hand side, I know which way's left, right, where to drill the holes, etc. It just suits my brain, because I can't work it out just off the drawing, sort of whether I'm flipping things the right way or drilling holes in the right place or having a measurement from one side or the other. Anyway, F15 and F14, the two little parts or three little parts you've got to make between those are relatively straightforward. I'll show you what I've done. On the first drawing, you've got to make a little bracket and countersink rivet it together, and that's the bracket for the rudder pedal assembly to attach to. And also on that drawing is a little L bracket, which you're supplied the stock material for, and you have to shorten it and drill a couple of holes in. Not sure what that is for yet, it's just called a clip. So and then on the next drawing, F15, you've got to make up this part, which runs up the front edge of the let's go wide angle here, that's better. Runs up the forward edge of the side, and this part here you attach the firewall to, and then the hinge half that's sandwiched between the two is where the cowling attaches to, so that basically sits in there. So I've got all the bits together, and I just thought I'd show you them all in situ. So we've got an engine mount at the top, or the engine frame mount, let's say, not the engine itself, but the engine frame or motor frame attaches to that. Then we've got that assembly down the front edge, which serves a couple of purposes. Another engine frame mount at the bottom, and then there's a stiffener running up there, two running up either side of where the wing spar comes through. The wing spar will come through and into the aircraft this way. That's where the aileron drive goes through there, and there's a number of stiffening components around the outside of that. There's a stiffener running across here, and then this is the seatbelt restraint mount there. Then running across the top, we've got a piece of inch square box section aluminium tube, which On F13 we have got to cut into some interesting shapes at either end, and we've got to put some slots in it for these to engage into. And to be quite honest, looking at it, it's probably the most complicated part to make so far, purely because of positioning and cutting the slots for these to go inside, and then they're riveted to the inside of there. Yeah, so it's all pretty straightforward. There are a number of little gussets that do various jobs, but apart from that, everything's pretty straightforward. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. I've done F15, I've done F14, and now I'm on F13. So I've got to do the top longeron and also the bottom one, which is still over on the shelf over there. I haven't cut that up yet. So at about midnight last night, I started to think about what I'm going to do next. And sort of thinking forwards, and I thought, well, if I'm building the cockpit, hadn't I better start thinking about what equipment I'm going to put in the cockpit? Radios, flight instruments, things like that. And then I thought, hold on, I haven't seen the control panel. Where is the control panel? So I spent half an hour searching the garage for the control panel, only to find that it was on the shelf over there. Had been since I originally unpacked all the parts and put them on the shelf, but I put it at the bottom of the pile, and it was covered up with a load of fuselage components. So I dug it out, and then between midnight and sort of 1 a.m. this morning, or 1:30 this morning, I got completely obsessed by trying to lay out the control panel. And after about an hour and a half, I'd cut this. And this is my plan. This morning I've labelled it up and made it look a bit more pretty, or prettier. And I've already decided that I was going to go the sort of electronic route for displays and equipment. I wanted to keep the wiring down in the to the absolute minimum, so I've gone for some remote equipment as well. So starting at the left, I've got the standard trim knob. On our Sonex, I'm going to put, or thinking of putting, the ignition key, the two ignition switches, one for the mag and one for the coil ignition, and a start button, because I like start buttons. I put one on my car I built. And then next to that we have the flight instrumentation display, which I'm quite taken with the MGL Extreme EFIS, using the SP6 and SP7 modules with it. So full artificial horizon and compass, digital compass. They're remotely mounted, and everything talks over a couple of wires. So that's really quite nice. Below that, I'm probably going to use the E-Flaps controller, which is a push button electric flaps controller. Gives you flaps up and then 3 positions of down, fully programmable. Interfaces with the flap actuator that Sonex provide, so that's good. Sticking with the MGL theme, I really do like the idea of the MGL V16 transceiver and the touchscreen Razer display. I like the MGL V16 because, again, it's remote mounted, and you've just got a little control head which talks to it via a serial interface, and makes the wiring nice and easy. I can locate it somewhere discreet and out of the way, and not have to worry about it. Keeps the spaghetti down to the absolute minimum behind the control panel. Below that, the Trig TT21 transponder. Because where we live in France, we don't have to have a transponder. We don't have to have a radio really, but because it's going to be classed as an ultralight ULM in France, it doesn't really require any of these things. But because we live right on the edge of a controlled airspace, not having a transponder is a bad idea. Because we have a military base which is only a few miles away, and they fly low level all over this area, right over our house. So I've decided I'm going to have a decent radio and a decent transponder. The transponder being the most expensive part at the best part of €2,500. Don't know what that is in dollars. Somebody will tell me. And then next to that, the MGL Extreme EMS, the engine management system, which again I like because it's remote. The RDAC unit, which collects all the information from the engine, is remotely mounted. It can be in the engine bay itself, which is where I'm going to put it, and talks to the display via a serial interface, single wire, which is great. It also means I don't have to bring the manifold, because it's a turbo engine, I don't have to bring the manifold pressure pipe sensors and stuff all back here. It can all be done by the RDAC unit. Then the three backup instruments. I decided that, well, what happens if I do lose all the power? And I'm flying somewhere that I'm not familiar with? What instruments do I need in order to fly my aircraft? And to be quite honest, I just need the three, I think. The airspeed, because I don't want to stall and fall out of the sky. The altimeter, because I need to know how high off the ground I am. Well, off the datum, if I'm flying into an airstrip or whatever, that will help me get in, and a compass so that I can fly to a heading. If I know I've got to go south, I can go south. So if all this stuff on the left hand side here fails, I have these three instruments. But they're only going to be small instruments, going to go for the 57mm, I don't know what that is in inches, 2.5 inches ones, and very lightweight as well. Winter makes some very, very, very lightweight devices. I think the airspeed may be only 75 grams, very, very light. So probably going to go for that. It costs a little bit more, but it'll save some weight. And then coming across here, this is, well, I had some space left over, and normally when I'm flying I use one or two things for navigating. Either use my Samsung Galaxy mobile phone, which I've got Sky Demon on, which in the other ULM that I have, it basically gets, what do you call that furry stuff that sticks together? Well, you know what I mean. I basically stick it to the control panel and use it for navigating in that. Or I have a Samsung Galaxy, a Samsung Tab 10-inch tablet, and that's much sort of friendlier, but you really can't have it on your lap. It's too big to have on your lap. So I thought, well, if I've got some space spare, why not have a hinged kind of thing that if I'm flying with a passenger, the passenger can keep an eye on Sky Demon and give me all the relevant information off that. Or if I'm flying solo, I can hinge it out at a jaunty angle and I can see my tablet from the pilot seat. And then I thought, well, if I've got all this space and there's a gap behind it, when you open it, why don't I have a glove compartment? Not that I've got any gloves to put in there. So I would propose to cut a hole in this in some way, reinforce it around the back to maintain some structural integrity, and put a box behind. I don't know. I'm going to ask Sonex whether that's a bad idea. If there are any structural reasons why I can't cut a reasonably large hole, a letterbox sort of shaped hole in the back. And if I can do that, that'd be great, because I can put a map in there, car keys, all the stuff that, you know, mobile phone, all the stuff that usually ends up scattered all over the place and generally under the pilot's seat after it's fallen out of my pocket. And then right at the very end, because we live in the modern world, we need some power outlets to charge our USB devices when they go flat, and a 12-volt output for something, fused outlet. And then obviously we need some fuses. Now I'm not going to go overboard with fuses. I know some people put switches and fuses everywhere and it looks like something off the flight deck of a 747, but to be quite honest, my Super Gepard has 2 switches and 2 fuses, and it works very well, and I don't anticipate having lots of switches. I may well have individual fuses for the individual pieces of electronic equipment, but it shouldn't be more than half a dozen, maybe at the very most, somewhere between 2 and 6. And so that's what I've thought about at 1:30 in the morning, and it's going to be relatively light. I've sort of looked at using conventional altimeter, airspeed, you know, the ball unit, and engine temperatures and pressures, lots of little analog gauges. And when you add all that up, the weight of it is quite substantial. And actually going this digital route is going to save probably 1.5 kilos in weight, believe it or not. And just purely from the lack of wiring and the lack of things, really. Everything will be on the 2 primary displays there. With regard to the radio and the transponder, I've been sort of thinking about where to locate those, and I don't know whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. I'm sure somebody will contact me and let me know, but I had been thinking of remoting them behind the seat, in this sort of space here somewhere. Possibly even fitted up underneath here, because the seat has the ability to hinge forwards for access. And as I'm going to put the headphone sockets up here and the aerial up there, the transponder aerial below, possibly under one of the seats, I'm not sure yet, or it could go in there. I don't know how far apart the 2 aerials have got to go. I thought, well, if I've got 2 remote head units and they only need, one small cable to run from the head unit but down to the radio, why not put the radios in here, keep the wiring absolutely to the bare minimum? as I say, I don't know whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. I've never built an aircraft before and I don't really know what I'm doing. So if anybody's got some thoughts on that, let me know. And if anybody's got any thoughts about the layout of the control panel or any thoughts about the construction of the cockpit, do let me know. I'm always keen to hear what everybody's got to say, and I generally reply to anybody who's got a half decent comment. So that's what I've been up to, and I shall carry on and keep you posted on the progress. The cost of all that equipment is a bit more than I was planning. Originally, I had budgeted about €3,000 or £3,000, I think it was back then. But now we're in France, so everything's in euros, of course. For radio and some instruments. Of course, the transponder. Adding the transponder adds a huge amount, €2,500. And then obviously going totally digital has a cost implication, as well as having to have duplicate, or I don't have to have, but I would prefer to fly with a backup system, even though my mobile phone has Sky Demon on it, the tablet has Sky Demon on it. Everything's not going to die, but it's nice to have some non-electronic devices just in case. You never know, do you? So the total cost, as I've worked it out at the moment, is about €7,000 for all that equipment, including the RDAC units, the sensors. Haven't added the aerials on yet. I think they're about €150 a pop as well for each of the aerials. But yes, somewhere in the sort of €7,000. I don't know what that is in dollars or indeed pounds even. But that's my thoughts at the moment. We'll see how it goes. More later. Oh, I put my hand in front of the camera. Bad boy.